Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Happy Friday evening. Welcome tonight to our event with Kristen O'Neal, who is the author of Lycanthropy and Other Chronic Illnesses, which we can see right here. For those of you who have not joined us on Crowdcast before, quick rundown, and then we're going to kind of dive right into things. My name is Jenny. I'm one of the co-owners of Mysterious Galaxy. I will be your tour guide and Kristen's conversation partner for the evening. On the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the comments section. Please feel free to ask any question or share any love, ask any questions there, but also put your questions in the Ask a Question box, which there's a button right below me. It's underneath that little teal box. That is where we will collect audience questions for that portion of the event, which we will get to kind of, you know, after I get a chance to talk to Kristen a little bit and let you guys listen in, basically. But you can also click on the little button below me to get your own very own copy of Lycanthropy and Other Chronic Illnesses, which will also come with a signed book plate, as well as a very, very adorable postcard. Welcome to Bellows, which, yes, it's perfect. And it is obviously inspired by the book. And you can see what that looks like if you just click on the link. I don't have a physical copy with me, but it'll pop right up.
No, I don't have any either, but
yeah. I know we have them at the store. I know they've come in, but I did not plan that far ahead, I guess. But without further ado, this is Kristen O'Neal. Kristen is a freelance writer who has written for sites like BuzzFeed Reader, Christianity Today, Birth, Movies, Death, LitHub, and Electric Literature. She lives on the internet, and you can find her at Kristen O'Neal on Twitter. And this is her first novel, and so we are welcoming her tonight. It has been one of my kind of favorite reads of the year, one of my favorite books recently that has come out, and one of my newer staff picks. But I am going to now turn it over to Kristen and let her introduce the book a little bit, and we will start kind of diving on in.
Yeah. Oh man, it's been I would say it's been a while since I've done my elevator pitch, but I'm waitressing this summer, and I have done it a couple of times just to people who ask, "What else do you do?" But essentially, this book is about Priya, who has to come home from Stanford on medical leave and move back in with her family when she gets Lyme disease. And she is close friends with Bridget, but she's never met her in person, only online. The two of them join a chronic illness support group together. And when Bridget goes offline, Priya decides to go check on her to see if she's okay, and finds out that she is a werewolf and that is her illness. So, and then things spiral from there.
Shenanigans ensue.
I would say so.
So my first kind of thing that I would love to know more about is how you came up with the premise for this book.
Yeah.
I shared a little bit with Kristen beforehand. This is, I am very interested and have a lot of experience with, you know, chronic illness and disability. And I read the synopsis of this book, and I was like, this sounds amazing. This sounds so exciting. I love kind of talking about these things together. It's so creative. How did you come to this premise?
Yeah. I've always kind of seen werewolves as a metaphor for chronic illness pretty much forever. Like every time I watch like a piece of werewolf media, I'm like, so this is about being sick, right? Like I never saw werewolves as like in the same category as like not human monsters. I don't know. I feel like with like vampires, zombies, all this other stuff, they're like undead. They're, you know, they've turned into something else entirely. And werewolves are people most of the time, right? Like they just kind of have this thing that flares up once a month. And I'm just like, that's relatable. I feel like that's me. And no, I also think though, I really wanted to dig into that like frustration and not just like, oh wow, what a cool thing that you get powers all the time, you know. I remember I was I was sick at one point, and I was so frustrated because I had read this book when I was a kid of, you know, this kid had felt very sick for some period of time, and then it was just because his like magic powers were coming in, right? And I was like, where are my powers? Like, this is not fair. but yeah, I think I've always seen it as a metaphor for that, but also I'm kind of in the Guillermo del Toro school of the metaphor is also happening for real. Like, I
No,
think that
yeah.
makes it, you know, powerful, or hopefully so. But yeah, I really like it when it operates on both of those levels instead of just like saying, oh, this is a metaphor for this real life issue that we're actually not going to talk about at all. So
yeah, that was, I mean, for me, that was probably the most intriguing part of the book, was the way you made the metaphor real.
yeah.
But like, you had the magic and you had the real, and that's very uncommon in kind of literature that represents illness and disability. It often is kind of brought to the level of metaphor, or like, you're sick but you're going to get magic powers, so it's okay.
Exactly.
That's
And
not
so
really the situation here.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a disservice sometimes, or just, I mean, kind of frustrating to me when it's like, when it's trying to be like, oh, this bad thing actually is like cool and good in order to try to be like supportive of it, where it's like, no, it kind of sucks. Like, it's not fun, but yeah.
Yeah, that to me is what kind of really stood out about your book and just made it so unique in the direct way it sort of tackled that kind of pattern of representation, we'll call it, or kind of that history of representation. So related to that, when chronic illness is really central to, you know, the plot of this book, it really is a part of the book from beginning to end. It is not something that is passing at all, and in a very, I think, very important way. When you were writing the book, what were the points or kind of ideas or concepts or experiences of kind of chronic illness and disability that you most wanted to kind of represent or communicate to people in this novel?
Yeah, I think so this came on like the tail end of like a particularly bad flare for me. I mean, I'm always like, oh, I don't have that many, you know, issues, and then I've got this whole laundry list of like minor things, I guess. But I've got some like autoimmune stuff. I have celiac, plus you know, thyroid stuff, whatever. But you know, sometimes it just hits, and I think it was just I was feeling so much frustration about it that this kind of came out of. But I think really like I wanted to dig into both the isolation and then also the community, because that I think is super important. Because especially when you are young and when you're chronically ill or disabled, I think it's very easy to feel like you're the only person going through it. Because I remember I got sick my sophomore year of college as well. But it's one of those things that it's just like you looking around at all these other people at your school, and you're like, it's just like seems so unfair, right? It's just like they're not worrying about any of this. They don't have to like juggle all these doctor's appointments or whatever else, you know, worried about insurance, blah blah blah. So I think just that frustration, and then it can feel super isolating until you realize that you are not the only person actually going through it.
Which kind of like leads nicely into a question. There's a really wonderful kind of online community that Bridget and Priya have, or find. Priya or Bridget finds, invites Priya to, and they sort of have their oof, ouch,
it
my
kind of
bones
forms
group.
Organically.
Could you talk a little bit more about that and like why that community needed to be so central to the novel, which, you know, because Priya and Bridget is like this core friendship in the novel in a lot of ways, but it's also very much attached to this online community as well, and the importance of that for your characters.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, the first like image I had of this book was the scene where Priya goes to Bridget's house to check on her, and I was like, oh, like is this like an in-person group or not? And then I realized I was like, oh no, okay, I can slot in like my own experiences with like making friends online, and also like I think it's so important where I think COVID has kind of made people realize this who are not chronically ill. but basically like put them kind of into the same boat a little bit, to be like, this is actually like a vital way that chronically ill and disabled people can like have, you know, freedom and make friends and, you know, experience the world. So yeah, that was important, I think, as a way for all of them to be able to like meet in this space together.
Yeah. I love the way you kind of show them sort of like crowdsourcing life hacks, essentially, for chronic illness. I often will say, like, I'm not a huge social media person, but I think one of the best things I've ever been able to get out of social media is this. The only reason I still have a Facebook is because of a group I'm in that has to do with a very specific medical condition that I had that doctors don't even know about. It's super rare. So like getting information from that community was incredibly important to like make me less afraid in a lot of ways.
That's wonderful.
And so
this is that what you just mentioned is why I gave like I infected her. You know, that's why Priya has chronic Lyme, because like and like to parallel Bridget with that, because they are both diseases that people don't believe exist, but that are affecting them, obviously. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I think, obviously, like sometimes like doctors have to be a little bit behind because of research and all of that, but that can lead to, you know, a lot of minimization and stigmatization. So
yeah, and kind of the rarity of things can, well, in Bridget's case especially, right, like the idea that like she can't find a specialist, right, that's not even an option for her. But yeah, that kind of online space, and that's such a huge part of, like you said, like kind of chronically ill and disabled communities, especially in contemporary contexts, is really fun. That's also where kind of a lot of the joy in the book kind of takes place, and sort of the banter between the characters there. Was there any sort of like
love and they make friends? And,
was there anyone in particular that was inspiring the characters in the, not just Priya and Bridget and Spencer, but like also the characters in the group chat?
Yeah, it's not like a one-to-one for any of my online friends, but I mean, I have friends that I've known from like Tumblr that I met when I was 18 and that I still know. Like my friend Tracy actually has Lyme, and so I talk to her a lot about it. And so I've known her for like a decade. My friend Caroline, we bonded over like Shakespeare and the X-Files and like I don't even remember what else at this point. But like I went to her wedding, you know, a couple of years ago. So it's some of those things where it's like these have been very long standing. But then I think this is maybe going to be one of the more embarrassing things that I said. One of the first fandoms that I got into and that I made a lot of friends in, that this is kind of based off of, is the War and Peace fandom. So
I want to know more about this fandom.
War and Peace kind of slaps is the thing, secretly.
That's gonna be like that can be like the pull-out quote for just the event. It's not necessarily about lycanthropy, but it's that War and Peace slaps.
It does, unfortunately, because like Tolstoy is kind of the worst, but the book does slap.
Fair.
You can say it's his wife that edited it for him, which it was. Anyway, what's so funny though to me is that like, so I wrote this book and like based off of those interactions and those friendships, but also like I didn't have like a group chat like this necessarily. Like I had a couple like smaller ones, but not like this. And then when lockdown started, I made a lot of friends in this one group online, and we all got really close, and so it kind of like replicated this, and we all kind of supported each other through lockdown. And so it was just, I mean, that's ongoing, I guess, but yeah, that was just one of this like fun weird surprises where I was just like, I wrote this and then it happened. So
nice. What I like the like life imitating art sort of
Yeah,
classic way.
it keeps happening to me.
One of the things, and we've already kind of like mentioned a few in passing, I think, but there's a lot of kind of stereotypes that surround chronic illness and surround disability that get represented a lot. And I think that we've
Yes.
touched on this, but you take on a lot of them in the novel and you
Yeah.
undermine them. And things like cure
Yes.
narratives, things like the time, like you mentioned, the time of organizing your life around doctor's appointments.
Yeah.
That's such a huge part of experiencing chronic illness
Yeah.
and disability. And it is like like my partner has an autoimmune. I have other, not autoimmune, but other kind of chronic issues.
Yeah.
And our life together has to be planned around, a lot of these things. And,
Yeah, of course.
we've been together for many years and it's normal. But what were the kind of like, when you were kind of tackling this novel, what were the sort of stereotypes or these tropes that you were most excited to kind of tackle or like take on? Like,
right. I knew from the beginning. I was like, no one's dying. That was, I think,
you for that.
number one. I was just so frustrated. I wrote this down in my notes at the very beginning, and it never made it into the book necessarily. But I mean, I think it's like in it. But at the beginning, I wrote down like this frustration of watching. Bridget says it a little bit actually, but in a werewolf context and not like a chronic illness context. But I was just really frustrated in like watching movies, reading books, whatever, that either if somebody is sick in a book or a movie, they either get better or they die. And so I found that super frustrating because this stuff just kind of keeps going. And you keep living with it. And it changes and it ebbs and it flows, but that's life. Even like, it's not even like a linear, like, oh, I love my body now, or like, oh, I've learned how to manage it 100%, right? Like you've learned certain things, but I mean, like stuff like doctor's appointments, it's still exhausting. I, was just like, I'm so sick of this, like last week. So I feel like some things do get easier, but it's tiring still, and it's just like you live with it. And that was like really important for me to show, I think.
That was great. Yeah, like Priya especially has a lot of thoughts on, like, it's from her perspective, but also she is kind of the newest to chronic illness in the context of the novel, and so she does, like, you do such a wonderful job with her illustrating a lot of the kind of coming to terms with what it means when your body is fundamentally changing in part, like ways that you have no control over. And so I really appreciated that. I loved the point, like what you're talking about now is also like reminding me of the conversation that they have in their group chat where they kind of share like, who told you to get essential oils? Like, have they suggested this to you yet? And it's kind of like chronic illness bingo. Like,
exactly. Because they've all heard it.
I thought like a lot of the kind of humor that you include in the book in that way and in other ways does a really great job of helping create that community and showing kind of these shared experiences. What sort of attention or approach did you take to kind of integrating humor alongside what's a very serious topic? But again, like you said, this is life. Where like lycanthropy might not be, but like this is what like your life is. Well, we don't know. That was so wrong of me to assume. But like, as you said, like it's not about life being a tragedy, right? Like these are not things that you have to get over necessarily. What kinds of things were you thinking about when creating that balance between humor and seriousness, for lack of a better term right now?
Yeah, I think that's also, I mean, that's also important because that's how life works too, is just like the most absurd thing can happen like right in the middle of something deeply sad, or like vice versa. And I think, yeah, so my best friend, we met freshman year of college, and she had heart surgery right after college. And so obviously, you know, we talked about that a lot, you know, before that happened. She's fine. She's great. um, and I think she was just like telling all these jokes about it to me, and was just like, you know, it felt good to like joke about it, even though like I think people don't quite get it outside of a group like this, right? Where it's like, that's part of how you cope, is like telling jokes about your body and what it's up to, and or like who knows what it's up to, right? But I think that's just part of how you deal with it. But also Bridget is funny, and I am a clown, so I just like making people laugh. That's I keep talking to my agent, being like, "This new book's not as funny. Is that bad?" She's like, "No, it's fine." But yeah, Bridget is just a person who copes with dialing everything up to an 11. So that is how she deals with things.
Yeah, and I know I mentioned this before we started. I don't want to imply incorrectly that all the humor surrounds like
the werewolf stuff.
Ability
Yeah,
in that sense, because so everybody knows there's a delightful kind of chase scene where we must protect one of our heroines from hurting herself or others when having a flare up, we'll say. And so I highly recommend that scene. I read it and I think I was just laughing. My friend was, "What are you doing now?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah."
I love that because that scene was like the longest for me to write out of anything in the book. It took forever, logistically speaking.
Yeah, my partner had to listen to me talk about this book quite a bit as I was reading it. I'm pretty sure I read aloud the scene with the like, have they told you these things yet?
Yeah.
Because I mean, he and I both have experienced that from very well-intentioned people.
And that's the thing, is
but
it's not
right?
that people are, you know, trying to be unkind. It's just, it's
no, not at all.
Metric, right? Being like, oh, well, you know, yoga helped me feel better, you know. And not to say
yoga.
that I know. Yeah. I mean,
I'm terrible at it.
I'm trying a little bit for like carpal tunnel and stuff. But I mean, it's little things. It can help or hurt. But it's just not a one size fits all for everybody.
Yeah. What was different about your writing process for the novel from the kind of writing that you've done before? Because you've published short stories and articles for a myriad of places. What about your approach changed and what about it stayed the same as you moved to kind of work on the novel itself?
Yeah. The biggest difference, obviously, is that novels are long. But
they are long.
It's an endurance game, which is tricky. But I think actually, like broadly, I do have a similar approach to articles and to, you know, fiction, which is something that I kind of nailed down when I was writing papers in college. But I'm a big outliner, so I have to like know the shape of it before I hop in. So I do a ton of research and I, you know, make an outline. Usually I do like a chapter by chapter outline. But I don't get too granular with it because things will change and things will surprise me and, you know, come back around. But like Spencer ended up actually being like a much bigger part of the book than I thought, which is great because I love him. he's
Spencer is great. For those who haven't been exposed to him yet, he's the not hot animal control
guy.
like the guy they like enlist in their conspiracy. To help out.
They become a trio, kind of.
Yeah. What?
Yeah.
Or go ahead. No, keep going.
Oh no, this was actually technically the third book I've written. But I mean, that's kind of how it works. I remember like hearing that from people and being like, well, maybe I'll get it on my first try. But no, I mean, you gotta write a novel to learn how to write a novel. So
yeah, definitely. What was your favorite bit of information from your research that didn't make it into the novel?
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, I can pull up my.
I totally stole it from somebody else. But
I still have like really intensive notes. I use OneNote for everything. A lot of it did make it in. I think the most thrilling thing that made it in was I interviewed this woman in animal control, who I still don't know her name. She's on Reddit. She's just an anonymous Reddit user, and I am very grateful for her because she gave me like paragraphs of what she would do if there was a werewolf in her town. And I was just like, this is amazing. So yeah, not all of that made it in, but she sent me like truly like probably 1,000 words, like nice. Just really incredible. Sorry, I'm just looking at it now.
No, that's
theoretically an animal control officer could help a werewolf situation a few ways, and then goes to town. So I didn't use all of that, which is a shame.
That's awesome.
But I used a lot of it, I think.
Nice. I don't know why that was like the most surprising thing when I was doing some reading about like stuff that you've said about the book so far, and I was like, oh yeah, there probably had to be a lot of animal control research.
I know nothing about it. Yeah, I mean, and I obviously, I researched all the different illnesses as well, and like interviewed people and stuff, and got reads and all that, and also got reads for Priya because she's Indian American and I'm not. So yeah, I did like just a lot of research, and that's always how it works. Is that like probably 15% ends up like literally in it, but I think it all really helps like shape the story for you and makes it feel like more livable. So
I 100% agree. I tell that to my students all the time. I'm like, it still matters if it doesn't make it in like your final,
because it does make it
like
in,
like
kind of,
it. You know it, and now it's knowledge that you have that changes the way you see the things you do focus on. So that's really cool.
Yeah, like I was considering making Bridget and Priya live farther away from each other until I, was like, actually, let me just, how hard is driving with chronic Lyme? So, yeah, stuff like that.
This kind of brings us to one of our audience questions, which let's see, some people have figured out. I forgot to mention at the beginning, but you can upvote questions for those of you who see one that you particularly want answered. This one is already at the top of the list, but Steph would like to know, can you talk a little bit more about Priya's culture?
Yeah, sure. It's not mine. She's Indian American. She's Tamil, and it was just important to me, I think, to make sure that that basically I didn't just have a book with all white people in it. I wanted to tell a story that was diverse in a number of ways. So, talking race, talking sexuality, talking gender, and disability, and chronic illness as well. So yeah, I just, it was important to me that it not be like a whitewash story. And so I know that's like tricky territory. And I really did a lot of research. And yeah, there's a lot of scenes with like her family. So I dug into that a lot, and I talked to my friends, and I got some sensitivity reads as well. So in that, it really helped for a lot of little things as well. But yeah, I think she's Indian American, so both of those things are part of her identity. And yeah, I actually, one of my Indian American friends from church. They go to like the church that we met at, and then also like an Indian American or Asian American church as well, because that's like how they connect to their culture. So yeah, I guess that's a brief overview of that.
Thank you.
But yeah, there were a lot of reads, and then those happened at multiple points in the process as well. So when I finished the first draft, I mean, like I had asked questions before that, but I got to read it then, and then through my publisher as well.
Nice.
So,
and Matt has asked, what was it like to pitch this book? It seems like narratives around disability are uncommon, especially positive representations.
Yeah, my pitch, I could probably find my query letter in here somewhere. But it basically, I think my pitch was like threefold, which was like, this is a book about werewolves, online friendship, and chronic illness. Although I said it in the reverse order. So I said this is a book about being chronically ill. This is a book about making friends online. This is a book about being a werewolf. So
like the plot twist at the end.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that kind of trio was my elevator pitch for it. But I queried it as Teeth. That was the title, which is also the title of a movie about vagina dentata. So we could not use it.
Yes, that goes to a question from Heather about whether you considered any other book titles.
Yeah,
They love the current title, but they wanted to know that as well.
Yeah, so Teeth. Chomp. Yeah, I did Teeth though because I think that was like a unifying thing for Bridget and Priya, and I liked that. Because Priya was bit by the tick that gave her Lyme. And then Bridget, well, spoiler alert.
There's a lot of
her
teeth
do fall out of her mouth when she turns into a werewolf. So
yes, teeth is a big. I was gonna say, like,
there's a lot of teeth. There are a lot of teeth. Yeah,
in a few different ways. Speaking of werewolves, I'll get back to one of my questions that I kind of skipped over because we're bouncing around. Nice.
Sure.
What are some of your favorite werewolf stories, and how did you go about developing your own sort of werewolf lore for the novel? Like what kinds of things did you pull from? Yeah, more. Yeah. I like research questions, generally speaking.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I think so. I did watch Teen Wolf, the MTV TV show when I was in.
I've heard good
college.
things. I have not watched it, but
it's bad, but it's good. So it's bad and good.
That describes most of what I watch on television. So
teens running shirtless through the woods for some reason. But no, that I think that wasn't. I don't think that really shaped this that much necessarily. Because I knew I wanted Bridget to be pretty isolated, and that's a lot about like packs and stuff like that. But yeah. So I think that was a big. Not necessarily an influence. I mean, that's just something I watched for fun. I think the closest example to something that would influence this more was Being Human, the UK TV show, because I think it's really interesting. The character, whose name I am now struggling to remember. Hold on, I'm gonna cough a little bit. But he has just a really complicated relationship with being a werewolf. That I think I found really interesting and really resonated. Yeah, so it's not something that he enjoys, right? It's something that's disrupting his life. So I think that was probably the biggest seed of that. And then I also knew I wanted to create my own lore because of the metaphor. I wanted it to be a medical issue and not as much just kind of full moon magic kind of thing. So I looked into a lot of old werewolf myths. I actually went to like the reading room at the New York Public Library, and I like you can't you can't check out those books. That's like older books that have to stay like in house. So I read a bunch of them there, which was really fun. Because it's a lot of stuff about like how to turn into a werewolf in the first place, like how you can make it happen. Because it wasn't really like the bite, and so that's a big part. Is the question of how is this passed down? How can this pass to other people? That's something that they kind of are trying to solve over the course of the book. Yeah. So I think, I wanted to make it more of a medical condition. And I talked to my friend who's a doctor a lot about this. I really bothered her here, which, classic. I have so many messages where I was like, okay, another question about werewolf hormones.
Well, again, Priya does a very similar thing, right? She's like,
oh yeah,
reach
a lot
out
of
and
that was
ask
straight from
before. Yeah.
So when she talks to Spook about it, that was a blend of me talking to my one friend who's a doctor and my other friend, or my brother's friend, I guess, who is like a PhD researcher. Yeah.
Is there any kind of bit of the lore that you created that internally you're kind of like, I hope this becomes like a werewolf trope?
I don't know. That's so interesting to think about. I love the teeth. I'm just very fond of all of her teeth falling out. Like, I like that. I like a little bit of body horror, so.
Nice. I like the way, I've read a few body horror books. I'm not a huge horror reader recently, and I like the kind of the teeth having in lycanthropy, the kind of like, it's teeth sort of like moments as well that were pretty because teeth are
the human teeth are inside of the wolf teeth. Is how it works. So.
And teeth are I'm probably going to get this totally wrong, but like when you dream about losing all of your teeth, it's like you have some sort of weird anxiety happening or something, or
sure. Well,
I don't know.
My own experiences, I guess.
Yeah. Next, we have a question from Sarah who asks, "What was your greatest joy while writing this book?"
Oh, that's such a nice question. I think just being able to, I did have a lot of fun with a lot of the scenes, but also being able to work through some of my own feelings about my body was really, I don't know if joy is the right word, but it was really, I think, good to be able to kind of start sorting through that a little bit. Not start, I've been doing that for a while. But that was nice. And
publicly address it.
Yeah, and just the friendship moments as well. I think I loved writing Priya and Bridget's friendship. I don't know, it's like very strong. They really care about each other. They really love each other. And so the scenes with them and then the scenes with the two of them and Spencer, I found very fun.
Yeah, I love. I don't know. I love Spencer.
He's fun.
He
really knows how to go with the flow, kind of.
Yeah. He's not around that much, but when he's there, he adds like a certain something, I guess.
A vibe. Yeah.
Yeah. You talked this is again from Matt. You talked a little bit about the way COVID changed how people react to illness. Have people reading your book been influenced similarly that you've noticed?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think I've heard from a lot of people that it's caused them to kind of consider chronic illness in another light, which I think is good, which is positive. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also one of those things where, I don't know, chronic illness and disability, it's not like something that stays static, right? And so an abled person can become disabled, right? A healthy person can become sick. And so I think that's also part of this that maybe is important to recognize.
Yeah, I think the way we put it a lot, and disability. So it's like disability is the one condition, should you live long enough, that everyone will experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
At one point, which you know, I don't like telling people that, but it's
Right.
always kind of
and it's one of those things where it's like, oh, you should care about this because it's affecting people and not just because it one day might affect you too.
Yeah.
But also like it one day might affect you too.
Yeah.
So
well, yeah, and that I could go on a tangent about this, but I won't. But definitely agree. What are some of your favorite books about chronic illness or about disability, or that illustrate, and by about I mean fiction, nonfiction, right, anything like that? Yeah. We were at a recent event with River Solomon. We were talking about this, and they got a little stumped, and I'm like dying to know.
Yeah. Hannah Moskowitz covers this a lot in their books. I know in a really good way. I think their book is, I think one of their books is called Sick Kids in Love, and it's, you know, they don't die, which is important. And right before I wrote this, I read a book by Kendra Fortmeyer called Hole in the Middle, that also kind of dives into this by making it like, you know, making like an absurd kind of illness, which is that she literally just has like a hole in the middle of her torso. And so that, I think, kind of, I was like, that like was an inspiration in like realizing that I can get weird, you know, and then that's okay to get kind of strange when I'm reading about this. And then with nonfiction, there's a book called Illness is Metaphor. It's Susan Sontag. It's, you know, I read it in college, as I'm sure a lot of people did. But that was really interesting because it was talking about how the way that we talk about illness, like, affects, like, it makes it like into our language and affects how we think of certain issues or problems, or, you know, by using it as a metaphor, and how that changes as like our conceptualization of illness changes, which I thought was really cool. So yeah, off the top of my head, those are.
Susan Sontag has some great stuff.
Yeah,
she's really great. I haven't read the other ones though, so I think I've heard of Sick Kids in Love, and I might have a copy of it, but I haven't read it yet, so I have to get on that. The other kind of book recommendation question I often like to ask of people is, if someone wanted to get to know you better, what book would you recommend they read?
Oh man. Oh geez. I feel like, okay, if I say The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, I'm going to sound like an insane person. It is one of my comfort books because I think at its core, it is about being gay and repressed. And I'm not repressed, but I used to be. So I can find that relatable. I don't know about, I maybe not getting to know me though. I think the better answer maybe would be Madeline L'Engle. I love her. That's an author and not a book, I realize. But I read Wrinkle in Time many times as a kid and as an adult. And I think the way that she approaches, like, I don't know, her mix of like magic and reality, I find really interesting. In the sequel to A Wrinkle in Time, I think it's A Wind in the Door. A lot of it like takes place like inside a mitochondria, like just whole scenes happening, and it's just like a lot of like random cellular biology or, you know, physics that I think that's fun and interesting. So she uses it in really interesting ways. And I think she also like, oh sorry,
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, also just like really takes an empathetic approach to humanity, and that's, I think, super important. I really love people. I think yeah, that matters, to put like that same care, I think, into your characters. And that's like, I don't know, loving the monstrous or loving the weird was something that was important to me. So
do you have any thoughts on the adaptation of A Wrinkle in Time? Because I'm afraid to watch it.
I haven't seen it. I still haven't seen it because I heard mixed things about it.
Yeah,
I heard some people didn't like
I'm
I was like, oh, I want to like it so bad.
It looks so pretty. Like it looks beautiful.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. Yeah.
And so just a couple more questions as we're wrapping up. So if anybody has any more questions for Kristen, please do share them. My next question is one that I'm fully admitting that I am stealing from Roxanne Gay, who delivered it by way of proxy at the River Solomon event. But what is your favorite thing about your own writing?
Oh, God.
I thought this was a great question because we don't talk about the things that we like about what we do. And I think that's a nice, like, platform to have.
Yeah. This is difficult. I think I like my dialogue a lot. I gotta get some water. But yeah, I think I really love writing dialogue. So yeah, I think that would be it.
Nice.
I like trying to like balance what people are saying versus what they aren't in a conversation.
And I can verify as a reader, like the character dialogue is really has a lot of personality and is descriptive. And when you get like chapters of the group chats that are all written dialogue that are
I'm shocked. I'm shocked that Jonte is my editor. I'm shocked that Jonte let me keep that, like all 8 of them. I was like, thank you, this is amazing, but wow, that there's a lot of people in this chat.
Yeah, but like those chapters flow so well. I think sometimes when you get those snippets, you get small bits, or they don't go on for long bits of time like that, but they did in the book, and they were great to read. They were lots of fun. Let's see. Heather would like to know what the weirdest thing you Googled while researching for the book was.
Oh, Heather, that is a good question. This is the thing. This is very stupid. Sometimes if I have like something that I'm like embarrassed to be Googling, I'll like do it in an incognito tab. Not like it's inappropriate, like I should know the answer to this and I'm embarrassed, but I don't. So I will Google it in an incognito tab. But
if I knew how to do incognito tabs without Googling how to do an incognito tab, I might do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think, man, there was a lot of weird stuff, but I think, so this made it kind of into the very end, but I didn't know if it was going to be a bigger part of it. But I did look up like a lot of weird like road trip attractions. Again, nice. I'm not sure that's it. I mean, I don't know. I also looked up like werewolf lore and weird flowers, and this is what happens if you. Oh, that was going to be a spoiler. Never mind. Don't worry about it.
Nothing happened.
Nothing at all.
Nope, don't pay attention.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, but I think there's a lot of like really weird roadside attractions or like weird museums that didn't make it in, but that I made like a list of. So,
thanks.
Yeah.
And what are you working on next?
Here's the thing that...
or what are you allowed to say about what you're working on next?
Here's the way that I played myself is that quarantine started and I was like, well, I wrote Lycanthropy pretty fast, like the first draft. I was like, I wrote the first draft of Lycanthropy when, in like 6 months. And so now that I have all this free time to take advantage of in quarantine, I'm sure I'll also do that for this one, which is not the case because I'm still reading it. But I think similar to this, there is like, it's kind of a normal contemporary book with one weird thing in it. And so basically things that I'm digging into in this one are kind of two people connect over talking through this radio that the protagonist Joe fixes up. She works at her grandfather's electronic repair shop in Texas, and I'm from Texas. And starts talking to somebody on the other side, but it's about, I guess a lot of it is about like reconciling your faith with your sexuality, and about rural queer history, and about like reaching to the past, to kind of like find people that you like wish that you could have talked to about what you're going through. So yeah.
Nice. That sounds great. And
Thanks. It's a little more serious. So we'll see.
But let's see. I'm saving what the current top question is for the last question. So everybody get ready. But have you done any of the road trips that you researched? Have you visited any of those places yourself?
Yes. So that's why the one that ended up in the book. So they go to Centralia at the end. And yeah, that's why I put it in, because I went there. Nice. And it was really fun. I was halfway through reading this book and I got laid off, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to rent a car and I'm going to drive to Pennsylvania. And I did that. So yeah, it was really fun to like be there and to like get a lay of the land a little bit better. Because Bellows is actually based on this town in Vermont that I went to with my college friends called Bellows Falls. And it is maybe one of the single weirdest experience that I've ever had somewhere, because like it was really super foggy. It was like kind of raining, and the whole town was closed. Like all the buildings in town were closed except for this one thrift store that we went to that was playing like the most insane like you know those Alvin and the Chipmunk songs, but then they slow them down to regular speed, or like to like make the person sound normal, but they're like very slow and creepy. That's like what was playing just like, over the stereo. And like there's this like sign that was like, you know, something about being a friendly place to hang your hat. And I just came out of this and I was like, where are we? Like,
what is this place?
So I kept that up in my dome. But yeah, Centralia is also another place that I visited.
And I think we've got 2 quick ones left. First of which, if you could tell Priya and Bridget one thing each, what would you say?
Oh man, that's tough.
This one's probably more sentimental than the next one that I'll
ask. Okay. Yeah.
Well, it's probably sentimental, but it's a little.
I think it would kind of be the opposite for them. I think for Bridget, it would be like, you'll figure it out. Right. And that like you need to do that as well. You can't just keep avoiding it forever. And I think with Priya, it would be more like, you don't have to figure it all out, you know, because that's kind of their warring impulses as characters. Yeah.
I think that's very fitting for both of them. Part of me really wants to end on that really sweet note, but I feel like Matt will get really mad at me if I don't ask, what is the name of the War and Peace fandom? And I feel like so Matt is my partner, and I feel like he probably is downstairs sitting there with this look on his face, being like, I have an idea for a name.
Here's the thing is that I'm going to read this post that I saw the other day. It says, thinking of my Tumblr mutual who referred to War and Peace as WAP today. So I think that is it.
I think that is an awesome answer.
Yeah, that's it.
The original WAP.
Yeah, it's WAP.
I like it. I think that is a very fitting and an excellent answer, and much better than whatever Matt was thinking he was going to.
The real answer is that a bunch of us saw the musical Natasha Pierre or listened to in The Great Comet of 1812, which is excellent. So
I have not listened to it. I've listened to some of it, but
it's really good.
And I love Josh Groban because I don't think he takes himself seriously, and I love him.
Yeah, he was really good in it. I think that was his first musical that he did, officially. So.
Nice. I think you're right. Yeah, definitely stage. Yeah. Well, on that note of brilliance, and at the end, I really want to thank everybody for coming to this event and listening to our lovely chat. Please go out or go down to the button and get your copy. Don't go out anyway. We can go out now, and get your copy of Lycanthropy and Other Chronic Illnesses. It is such a fun, smart book. Again, one of my favorites of the year, so I'm really excited for more people to read it. And thank you, Kristen, for your time and all of your thoughtful answers to the questions and everything you shared with us. It was really wonderful having you. Good luck with the next book, finishing it up and getting on the way. And if you kind of go back, there's a lot of positive comments in the comments section if you want to look. And lots of people who kind of, especially at the beginning, were talking about how much they agreed with or felt kind of, to put it the cheesy way, felt seen by how, the representation, how you were talking about chronic illness. So thank you for your openness and for sharing with us. And
of course.
Good luck and have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Happy weekend to all. And
ladies and gentlemen, weekend.
Yes, right. Have a great night, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.